Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're looking at 10 things we want to see in Breath of the Wild 2. For this list, we'll be looking at items, story elements, and other improvements we'd like to see included in Nintendo's upcoming sequel. What's your greatest desire for Breath of the Wild's follow-up? Share with us in the comments below. Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Traditional Dungeons.
Don't let us down, Link.
One thing that many players agree on, in terms of where Breath of the Wild fell short, is its dungeons. While we didn't hate the divine beasts, they didn't have the same charm as traditional dungeons from past entries. Exploring ancient temples and battling dangerous creatures added to the uniqueness of each area. We'd love to see the series return to its roots in this regard. And with the inclusion of areas both above and below Hyrule, it seems there's definitely room to include some. We also hope to see the return of the shrines, as these bite-sized puzzles helped satiate our thirst for dungeons. Hopefully, these new areas will allow for both. Deeper story.
You're safe.
Breath of the Wild put a heavier emphasis on exploration over everything else, including story. While what we got was great with the various memories Link could collect, it was also a bit sparse. There are several places where the story could improve to dig deeper. With Zelda not being trapped in Hyrule Castle, why not further explore her and Link's relationship? Skyward Sword Zelda had a bit deeper characterization, so seeing something like that again would be wonderful. There's also room to improve on NPCs and their side quests. Depending on how long after the first game this takes place, we could see the rebuilding of the kingdom, which could let NPCs play a less passive role than before. New paragliders. Giving Link a paraglider was a simple yet brilliant addition. It made covering vast distances much easier, and we've seen several games like Genshin Impact and Horizon Forbidden West follow suit. For the sequel, some minor changes to it could go a long way. Any way to customize the design would be appreciated, maybe by unlocking different patterns or being able to create your own. What we'd really like are paragliders with different stats. Link could start with his regular one, but unlock one with higher speed through a side quest. Yes, this request is a small one, but it's still a neat way for Nintendo to further improve on something that was already great. The Hookshot. Speaking of Forbidden West, the Polecaster has made scaling its environments much more manageable, so we can't help but want to see something like it in Breath of the Wild's sequel. Luckily, the series already has an item like it that we desperately want to return. Nintendo tested the hookshot within the first game early in development, but thought it made climbing and paragliding pointless. However, if the hookshot could only attach to certain points, like it does in older games, that wouldn't be the case. Plus, if we're exploring floating islands in the sky, the hookshot would be a wonderful item to use there. We also have no doubt that players would figure out all kinds of awesome ways to use it in tandem with the game's physics. Underwater exploration. We know requesting underwater exploration in a Zelda game might irk some players, but the series has come a long way since the N64. Both Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword made traversing depths much easier through different items and mechanics. In Breath of the Wild, Link could gain a Zora set of armor, but none of the pieces allowed him to breathe or swim underwater. Perhaps one of the sequel's many bodies of water could be retconned to be holding a dark secret. Or maybe the caves we've seen in the trailers could house an underground lake. Giving us Zora armor and not letting us venture past surface level feels like a missed opportunity we'd like to see rectified. Recipe book. By combining the abundance of meat, plants, and other ingredients in Breath of the Wild, players could gain helpful stat boosts while also healing themselves. Stumbling onto a new, highly useful recipe was always a joy, but you better either have a fantastic memory or write it down. You can see a concoction's recipe in your menu, but there's no way to save it. Adding a recipe book item for the sequel feels like a no-brainer, a way to enhance one of the aspects that set the game apart from other entries. The Sheikah Slate can already be used to track the game's various ingredients, so Nintendo could just implement the feature there. Regardless, we'd like the ability to save our favorite recipes in some way. More mounts. We all love Epona, but we also loved being able to tame wild horses with different stats in Breath of the Wild. Link could also ride other animals like bears, deer, or even a spirit, but he couldn't register them at stables the way he could horses. For the sequel, why not remove that little hindrance and let us register whatever we want? Being able to pick up and drop off our pet bear sounds awesome. Additionally, since the sequel will cover new areas under and above ground, why not introduce some new types of mounts? Perhaps a certain species of bird could make their return to the series. Playable or companion Zelda. Another frequent request from players that we wholeheartedly agree with is for Zelda to play a bigger role. We'd be ecstatic if Zelda were playable, considering the entire franchise is named after her and her magical prowess would lead to varied gameplay. But if that's too much to ask, at least let her journey with Link and act as a companion in certain sections. Some versions of the character have, thankfully, stepped away from the damsel in distress role. Even in the first, she held Calamity Ganon at bay for a century. But if we start a new adventure by separating her from Link, it will seem like a step backwards. She deserves a more active role when it comes to defending her kingdom and people.
It seems that my role is unfinished. There is still something I must do.
Other classic enemies. We're grateful Nintendo included different colored variants of enemies to signify power levels, because other than that, the enemy variety in the first game was a bit lacking. Since it's using the same engine, we hope Nintendo will take the time to include other classic enemies from the series. Imagine journeying through one of those dark caves and coming across a group of horrifically redesigned Redeads. Or imagine 1v1 duels against knights with just as large an arsenal as Link. The return of Darknuts or Iron Knuckles. We've only glimpsed a couple of shots with enemies in the trailers, so who knows what's coming. We just crave some old matchups with the same physics and mechanics of Breath of the Wild. Fixable weapons. Weapon durability in Breath of the Wild is one of the biggest points of contention between players. Some believe it creatively forced you to switch up your tactics, while others lamented the loss of favorite weapons, having to track them down again. There's an easy compromise Nintendo could include in the sequel: blacksmiths. With Hylian's rebuilding, it seems natural that someone, somewhere, would pick up the art of smithing and open a shop. If there was a way to save your favorite weapons from permanently breaking, it would fix a big problem some players had with the first game. And for those that were unbothered, you need not spend money or resources to fix them. Everybody wins.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.